Hello everyone, welcome to this short tutorial of Othello game, a board game designed to read and enjoy Shakespeare's Othello, one of his most renowned works, in a simple yet fun way. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to play this game, either with your friends or your peers, or if you're a teacher interested in using games in your classes, how to use it with your students. I'm going to tell you how to move on its board, what the pieces are, what every card or piece does, and how the game generally works. Now you might be playing the actual physical board game, or you might be playing the digital version. If you are playing the physical version, or if you have printed out your own version of this game, there is a guide sheet in the box which contains all the information that I'm giving in this video. Also, all the necessary files and templates for this game can be found online through the link below this video that I'm putting in the description box. And you can download those files and those templates for free and print out your own version of the game, or even adapt it to make a new game based on a new play. As I like to put it, this game, just like Shakespeare's plays, is very adaptable. So without further ado, let's go learn how to play Othello. So first things first, I am going to talk a little about the board game of this game. And the board, as you might know, is the most important piece in every board game. And that's why, before delving into the details of the game itself, I'd like to acknowledge that the game board of this game was inspired by two basic things. The first thing is the story of Othello, which itself has 5 acts, and here we have 5 levels, or shapes, or phases, which you can explore while playing. And secondly, the board game of an important 15th century tavern game called the Game of the Goose, also known as the Royal Game of the Goose, which is one of the first board games to be commercially manufactured. The Game of the Goose is a race game, relying on dice throws to dictate the progression of the players. So the first person who reaches the last space or home would be the winner of that game. Before anything, and before talking about the actual game and how it is played, let's see first what comes in the box, and if you're playing the physical version of the game, and what can be seen if you're playing the digital version of the game. So inside the box, there is a dice, because what's life without chance? Chance is a part of life, and that does include the lives of characters in the fictional works such as Shakespeare's Othello. 4 cool 3D pieces in the shape of Shakespeare's head. These are the game pieces, but any other game piece would do perfectly. I just thought this would be more fun. A set of cards that each does a certain thing, and I'm gonna talk about them in a minute after like 2 or 3 slides. 2 types of point cards, the red one for when you do a task, and the golden one for when you do a golden task, surprisingly. The game board, a whiteboard, and I'll explain how you're going to use it. There is one in the box of the physical version of the game, but even if you're playing the digital version of the game, you're still gonna need a piece of paper, or a notebook, or a whiteboard if you have access to it, and 1 or 2 markers. A Shakespeare book, specifically Folger Shakespeare edition of Othello, because this is the book based on which the game was created. If you do not have the actual physical book, you can access this book online for free through the link that I'm including below in the descriptions. And finally, as I said before, if you have the physical version of the game, there is going to be a guide sheet in the box which contains basically all the information that I'm giving in this video. Now, because the game board of Othello might look a little odd or intimidating, which it most definitely isn't, I'm going to first talk about how to move on the board, and then after that, I'll go into the details and the rules of the game itself. Okay, let's go. Let's see how to move on the game board of Othello again. It is very simple, very basic, and I promise you're gonna love it. So, as the main goal of every play, or almost every play, is to reach to a conclusion, the main point of this game is to reach to the center home, or space, or part, and that is why the first person who gets there gets to be the winner. So after you roll the dice for the first time, you start from the right space or home of each of the 4 starting points, and then you should move in a counterclockwise direction, which means from right to left, as many spaces as your dice lets you. If you reach the dotted lines, it means that you have 2 options. You can either continue in the same shape or level or circle where you are, or you can move inwards 1 level and only 1. In other words, you can go from one shape to another, for example, the circle to the square, but you can change levels only once in every move. And you cannot move from one level to another twice in a row. It means that you must change your dotted line if you want to move to the next level. You cannot move backwards in shapes, for example from the outer square to the outer circle, unless another player hits your piece on the board, which means you are going to have to start from the scratch, starting again from the starting point. This is all that you need to know about your movements on the board game of Othello, a game. Now let's see how you should actually play the game. Let's see how to play the game. So before you begin the game and before you actually start moving on the board, every player is given 3 1-point cards and 2 2-point cards. You will need these cards in case you fail to do a task or a chance card punishes you. Leave the other point cards into the box, and let's call the box the bank from now on. To see who gets to start first, all the players must at least roll the dice once. The person who gets a 6 first, or the person who gets the higher number, gets to start the game. You then roll the dice again and start moving on the board from right to left. Based on what your chance decides for you, you might land on either a story space or a S space, a task space or a T space, a chance space or a CH space, or a golden task space or a GT space. I'll talk in details about what happens in each of these spaces in the next slide, but for now, if you land on a story space, you should pick a story card and narrate that part of the story of Othello to the other players. The parts are very short, and it should not take more than 1 minute to complete each of the cards. You then keep that card to yourself, and each of those cards worth 1 point. If you land on a task space, you have to pick a task card and complete the task successfully. You cannot pass on these spaces, meaning that if you do complete the task successfully, you will gain 1 1-point card, and if you do not complete the task successfully, you're going to have to return 1 of your 1-point cards to the bank. If you land on a chance space, you should pick a chance card. If you land on a golden task space, which is much less likely than the other spaces, you get to pick a golden task card. The difference is that you can pass on doing a golden task, which means that you're not going to gain or lose any points if you decide to pass. With the simple tasks, you do not have the option to pass. The game finishes in either of the following three ways. Either all of the story cards are red, which means that you have finished and hopefully learned the story of Othello. In this case, the person who has the most points and the point cards wins. Or you decide before you begin the game that you're going to want to play the game only up until a certain act, based on the story cards on which every act number is indicated. In this case, again, the person with the most points wins the game when you reach that certain act. Or, in the third option, as mentioned before, the person who reaches the center point or the center space first gets to be the winner. The game immediately finishes, and no matter how many points you have gained, the person who reaches the center point gets to be the winner. Now let's see what each of these cards does and what the rules are. So now that you know how the game is played, how to move on the board, and what the rules are, let's get to know the cards a little more. Starting with the story cards, each containing a little information about the story of Othello. These numbered cards are the most important cards of the game. If you land on an SS space, you should pick and read a story card, draw a sketch of them on the board, and narrate that part of the story to everyone using your drawings. The next person who lands on an S space can either build off of your drawings or make their own from the scratch. If you are uncertain about how your drawings can look like, this is an example of how my students do it in our classes. Don't forget to keep your cards to yourself when you are done telling their stories, as they each worth 1 point. There are totally 54 story cards in the box. Other than the story cards, task cards are the best resources to gain points in this game. There are 5 different types of tasks in the game, and I'm not going to tell you what types there are because I want you to get to know the game on your own, but you should know that there are totally 100 task cards in the game. If you successfully complete a task, you are going to be given a 1-point card. Remember, you will lose 1 point if you fail to complete the task successfully. Also, remember that you cannot pass on doing the tasks. If you do pass, or if you want to pass, you will lose 1 point anyway. Chance cards will reward you for your good fortune, punish you for your bad luck, or assign some tasks to you to do. Finally, the golden tasks are tasks that are a little more challenging than the simple tasks. You can get 2 points if you successfully complete these tasks, and you can lose 2 points in case you don't. The good news is that you can pass on doing these tasks if you are unwilling to risk. Thank you so much for watching this short introductory video. If you have completely watched it, it means that you are now ready to play Othello a game. I hope you enjoy it.